I am not a big fan of coming up against opinions that some friends and colleagues and everybody might have, unless I just feel like they are just completely off base, and such, unfortunately, is the case for how I feel about that of my friend Joel Klatt, who has a opinion on the Connor Stalions stuff as it pertains to Sherrone Moore and where Michigan stands. I disagree wholeheartedly. We're going to get into it right here on this episode of Locked On Wolverines.
You are Locked On Wolverines, your daily podcast on the Michigan Wolverines, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Monday. We are back and doing it. Locked On Wolverines podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. I'm your man on the ground, Isaiah Hole, publisher of Wolverines Wire through USA Today Sports Media Group. Trying out the new camera, which I'm not going to use very often with this. If you're watching on YouTube, let me know what you think if I decide to check. The subject matter today means I probably don't want to check the comments. But Joel Klatt had his podcast released today, talked a lot about Michigan Sherrone Moore. I'm going to give you some of the highlights. The first thing he said, it was self-serving for Michigan to suspend Sherrone for weeks 3 and 4. I have some opinions on that, and then there's another aspect to it which feeds right into all of the rival narratives, and I've got tons of opinions there, which I spelled out on Wolverines Wire. So let's start off with this quote. Again, you can watch or listen to his entire podcast. I mean, he spends a large portion of that time discussing this whole thing, and he says kind of the same thing over and over again, which is kind of where I'm at here with this quote. So he says, let's be incredibly honest about it. It is self-serving for Michigan. This benefits them to try to get out in front of it is one thing to get out in front of it to benefit you. The most is another, which is obviously trying to get your feet wet, not only as, let's face it, a young head coach, but also with a new quarterback. You don't want to try to go through all those gymnastics early in the year with the suspension. So get your feet wet as a team, and in particular, the starting quarterback for the first 2 weeks and that big road test, Big Ten SEC, as Michigan, I got to scroll here, goes on the road to Oklahoma, which, like I said, is Sherrone's alma mater, and then serve the suspension. Is that beneficial for Michigan? Obviously, yes. Obviously, yes. That's why they're trying to do it this way. So my first thought here is, because you can go back to last week, and I had some pretty strong opinions on the suspension itself. I'm still not for it. You've got, I have my own sources that indicate a name that everybody knows. Every single person watching or listening to this knows this name, who it said things were still in flux, but then my buddy, colleague, Josh Henschke over on Maize and Blue Review, has indicated that it might be a little bit more closer to a done deal, that this is a settlement with the NCAA. So take whichever avenue you want, but I still don't love it without having your head coaches back publicly. I just think that it's bad PR. If nothing else, it's bad PR. That's where I'm at with it. But okay, so you have that part to it. I think obviously they wanted Sherrone to be able to coach not just the first couple games, but he wants to coach against his alma mater on the road. I don't know that Bryce Underwood figures into it, right? Because they could just go Mikey Keene if he's healthy, and feel like they've got a veteran presence and all of that, right? That certainly is a route that they could and might even take. Missouri's messing around down here. Anyhow, that's not even my problem with it. My problem with it is more so that to say it's self-serving, yeah, almost every time that a school gets into anything with the NCAA has tended to let the school, right, like if they self-report or anything like that. This wasn't a self-report. I'm not trying to indicate it was, but generally they let the school come up with whatever it deems as appropriate, and then the NCAA either says yay or nay, right? It doesn't always work out that way. Michigan suspended Jim Harbaugh for 3 games for Burgergate, and then he still got a 4-game show cause once everything was said and done, right? That was a lack of cooperation. And Joel goes on a lot more about Sherrone and the impropriety of deleting those texts. If he didn't produce the text, or the text had some kind of incriminating evidence on them and hadn't been as Joel even admits is relatively innocuous, right? Like everyone that's seen the text or has talked to someone who's seen the text, in my case, it's I'm one removed from that. I've talked to people who have seen the text. They say it's innocuous. There's nothing there, and he produced them for the NCAA, right? Like it's a heat of the moment decision when you're not sitting there recognizing the gravity of your actions, and yet you still are able to produce them for the NCAA. To me, it's no harm, no foul. NCAA doesn't think so. I'm not the one that's the governing body. It's up to them to come up with that punishment, whatever. But you tend to see that the NCAA will come out and let a school essentially punish its own, especially when it is self-reported. Again, this isn't a self-report. I'm not trying to conflate the things, but usually when that happens, the NCAA lets the determining school say, okay, here's what we're going to punish ourselves with. And then they're like, okay, great. That's what Michigan is essentially trying to do here, right? And so to kind of act like, oh, this is uncharted territory, Michigan's trying to punish itself in hopes that the NCAA agrees to it. Well, yeah, that's the point. And that's what happens across college football almost all the time. Now, this entire thing has been relatively sensationalized, again, right? Because nothing new has come out in the last essentially year and a half, right? Nothing since like early November 2023 has really become... Has there been any new information? But there's been some modulation to go along with this. And this is where I disagree with Klatt. And we're going to get to more to that in the second part of the second segment of the show here. But I just don't think that it's as big of a deal. I think 2 games, if I'm Michigan, I would have fought against that even. But, I think recruiting restrictions is more than appropriate. I understand the NCAA wants its pound of flesh. This whole thing is played out in the public, right? Like you have other things. And my brother in metal, Michael Wolf, was out here in Fenton today, and I met up with him. And like we were talking about it, and was talking about the MSU of it all, right? Alan Haller stepping down. And that's coming amid the revelation that MSU is under NCAA investigation. And yet we're not sitting here talking about that and sitting there, saying like, here's what the facts are and all of this. Cause like, that's what you see kind of generally with this, or it being played out in the media. A lot of people still don't really know or understand the lack of gravity of what Connor is alleged to have done. Again, like most people are mad that his mom went and scouted Purdue. Okay, like that's what you're alleging. His mom went to Purdue games with a cell phone and sent him video of the signalers like you could do, anyone could do, and you're alleging that because they have no evidence to say anything outside of basically that and a couple of his buddies, his naval buddies, right? So to me, it's just still so overblown, and a lot of people don't really know what they're talking about. And that's kind of where we get to the crux of this Joel Klatt argument that I'm not a big fan of. And this is where some of the rivals have gone with it. And this is why if I'm Michigan, I push back a bit more on some of these things, because from a PR perspective, having someone like Joel, who again, I respect deeply, I have not talked to him about any of the Connor Stalions stuff at all. I believe I've spoken a little bit to Gus about it, but not Joel. So I think that is where you start to kind of get into a little bit of a danger zone when you have the type of following that Joel has. We're going to get into the place where I feel like he's gotten it just so wrong, and we're going to get that here in just a moment. But before we do ever check your bank account and wonder where did all my money go between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending all in one place, so you just stop managing your money and start building wealth. When I started using Monarch, I realized just how much I was spending on food delivery. Now I just walk over to Crispelli's and get my food. But I budget smarter and save more. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. All right, here's where I get into a bigger disagreement with Joel. He started connecting Santa Ono's departure to all of this Connor Stalions stuff, which I think is beyond reckless. I'm not going to say that I know for like 100% fact here, but I will say I know from 100% logic with some facts mixed in, right? Like I haven't had this conversation because I haven't really had to. I've had conversations with colleagues and sources and such about Santa Ono leaving for Florida. And Joel tries to say like, hey, he's going to a lesser institution from an academic prestige standpoint. That really makes you think, right? That makes you wonder. Here's what he had to say. So now you have Michigan trying to get out in front of a suspension for their head coach, Sherrone Moore, and the president leaving for a job that we would all at least assume is not quite as prestigious. So something's coming, and it's likely very large and could even be financial. So the Michigan saga is going to be with us at least a few more months, a couple months after June. First, I want to give credit where it's due. Chances are, I'm going to go off of Chris Ballas's reporting, that the chances of it being a fine, the suspension, some recruiting restrictions I think Henschke has pretty much the same intel. All seems to be pretty much accurate. I have not heard anything from my sources, again, names that every single one of you would know, that there's anything bigger looming, that there's any kind of vacation of wins, there's any kind of postseason ban. I've been pretty strong about that, right? Now, of course, this is going to have to end with something more than a slap on the wrist, given like the proverbial hammer is not falling. I know that no matter what it is, rival fans are going to try to claim it's in the hammer, but they're going to be very upset because there's just not going to be. And if I end up being wrong, I will give you the biggest mea culpa ever. There's not going to be stripped national championships, vacated wins, postseason bans, all of the fever dreams of rival fans. I have been told are not coming true. Other colleagues of mine have reported the same. But to connect this to Santa Ono is, I don't know if the word scurrilous. I'm not sure on that. Just because I actually don't really, I'm using a word thinking I know exactly what it is. Scurrilous. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. That's exactly what I mean. Making or spreading scandalous claims about someone with the intention of damaging their reputation. Okay, Joel's not really doing that. Okay, that's how my brain works. Sometimes I know what a word means without knowing what a word means, and I tend to just use it on the show, and that's where I get corrected on the show, right? Like when I use the word matriculate over and over again for about 3 months before someone corrected me. Anyway, it's not what's happening. Okay, so first off, it's keeping in mind that Warde Manuel was extended after all of the Connor Stalions stuff, right? Extended. The AD who oversaw this. The athletic department has something like $250 billion in revenue, whereas you look at the University of Michigan as a whole, like the Michigan Medicine is 3 times that in revenue and has an endowment that is very large. I have it written down here. It's the endowment is near $1 billion. I think it's like $780 million or something like that. The hospital system makes $8 billion in revenue. Again, $8 billion. That's with a B. Athletics makes 250. I highly doubt that Connor Stalions, his mom, with a cell phone, and his buddies with a cell phone, and Sherrone Moore deleting text with Connor Stalions the moment that his name hits the news is enough for the University of Michigan president to leave. Now, based off of conversations I've had, it's more of the place is too big for him. There has been some political disagreements between him and some of the board members, the Board of Regents. He's overseen other things on campus that have more so been in the eye than I understand. Sports fans want to try to make things about sports, right? Do not forget that there was a whole encampment on the Diag for months and months and months following October 7th. There's been clashes about things with the administration of the United States and the university in which Santa Ono was silent. I'm not endorsing or not endorsing that. I'm just telling you that has been a moment of clash for some of the board members. Right? These are the things that have a lot more to do with Santa Ono leaving Michigan for Florida. right? He oversaw the University of Cincinnati and the University of British Columbia, and Michigan is a whole nother beast, right? There's a reason why they tend to get guys like Mark Schlissel to oversee things, because he comes from another massive school with a huge endowment in Brown, right? Like that is, he's got more accustomed to overseeing all of the political aspects, the academic aspects that a university has to do with. Okay, so that is more of what Michigan has had. Like when I was first at Michigan, it was Lee Bollinger, who had his clash with the Supreme Court due to affirmative action. When I was there again after I dropped out and went back to school, it was Mary Sue Coleman, who was much more visible in sports than Lee Bollinger or Mark Schlissel. Right, Michigan has at times had university presidents that wanted nothing, like Schlissel, wanted nothing to do with sports and essentially didn't have anything to do with sports. So just because there is a scandal, unless there's something we don't know about, like Santa Ono personally covered up something, because it's the cover up, not the crime, that is not why he is departing the University of Michigan for Florida. It has to do, I have been assured, with more of the other things. And there's an op-ed in the Detroit Free Press where the person who wrote in said that he basically was playing dead throughout a lot of these other situations that have nothing to do with sports. They didn't even bring up the sports part. If you are within the culture of University of Michigan and you're an academic, you aren't looking at the sports of it all and saying like, aha, that's it, right? If it was Warde Manuel, yeah, you could make that case. You could absolutely make that case. But this is again the reason why the PR is so bad for Michigan. Let's finish out talking about this scenario and what Michigan could have, should have done. All of that stuff. We'll do that here in a moment. Don't normally like having shows come out this late. I took pictures at church yesterday morning. I got good 3 hours of sleep. I have to be up way earlier than I normally am. Average about 6 hours a night, and I woke up 3 hours early, so that kind of tracks. Hence we're doing a late show because it took me this long to kind of feel like I could do something, come here and talk to you in a way that was commensurate with your hopeful expectations of me. And I'd rather give you a late show that's better than an early show that is stammering and has less cohesion to it. So that's where we're at. Again, usually the expectation is that a show comes out around 5 instead of 8. Maybe the video posts at 8. Generally, the audio is going to post at 5. That's our own internal expectations. Other side note, my hope and goal is to be on the Big Ten Roundtable this week, because I know a lot of you have been upset with the lack of Michigan defense there. So we're gonna try to make it on this week so that we can support you guys. All right. So Michigan, this is kind of all plays into my point about Michigan needing better PR with all of this, right? So I know that there's people that say, you idiot, Michigan. I saw this comment many places because my Monday show last week was on every message board. I didn't go to every message board, but it was on a few, and I read a few. But like, you idiot. That's how it usually starts. You idiot. Michigan can't comment on these things. Yes, they actually can. They absolutely can. They choose not to because the NCAA, I mean, I understand. It's one of those things where the NCAA could look down on that, but there is nothing that says that they cannot comment on any of these things. They could have commented on Connor directly if they wanted to. It's more of a, in the words of Captain Barbossa in the stunning epic Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Man's Chest. It's more of a guideline than it is a rule. That's more of what it is. It's more of a guideline. They absolutely can comment. And here is where they should have. They should have doubly commented because this news hit the day after Santa Ono was it was announced that he was going to leave Michigan for Florida. And this again, and I saw some of your comments that said Don Canham was not operating in the same era as that we currently live. That might be true, but the maxim is also still true. Do not let a one-day story turn into a two-day story. And by letting people make the connection between Santa Ono's departure and Sherrone Moore's suspension and the announcement that the Committee on Infractions is coming up on June 6th and 7th, allowed a lot of people to make connections that honestly aren't there. It would be as if, and this is a terrible analogy, Bryce Underwood got sick and missed a couple classes, and all you heard was Bryce Underwood missed a few classes, and then it comes out Sherrone Moore suspended 2 games. You're going to get certain conclusions drawn upon that are not accurate. Okay. So if I'm Michigan, knowing that I can comment on these things, the NCAA might not love the commenting, but it was in Michigan's best interest to control a little bit of the narrative that it can control, in order to not have these rumors and conspiracies foisted upon it. So if I'm Michigan and the news comes saying that the intention is to suspend Sherrone Moore, you got to say something when it is coupled with the Santa Ono departure. Because the Santa Ono departure, because he's controlling his own narrative about why he's leaving Michigan for Florida. Just like anyone does. Like when I was at United Talent Agency and I got laid off. I did get laid off from UTA, but I demoted myself back to the mailroom for like 3 months. They let me basically sit there and go interview wherever I wanted to, try to figure out what I wanted to do without just saying like, hey, you are doing literally nothing except for maybe one day a week when we ask you to run an errand. Right? Like I went from being borderline talent agent as an agent, 3 years in agent trainee, to being in the mailroom and just sitting in a computer room, printing out memes and running whatever errands I wanted to, leaving at the time that I felt appropriate, all that kind of stuff. So when they finally took all of us that were in that same boat, those of us who were kind of in a liminal space, I made a decision about what I was going to do next, and I proliferated that news, right? I controlled my own narrative, and it didn't work out, but I was like, I'm going to be managing comedians independently, and that's what I'm going to do. And I tried to do it for a year, and it did not really allow me to I did not have the resources, nor did I achieve my goals, and hence I moved back to Michigan. But I controlled my narrative. I told everyone exactly what I was going to do, exactly why I was doing it, and why I didn't want to be a talent agent anymore, the types of things that I was more interested in, which were all still true, right? But I controlled the narrative. Michigan absolutely had an opportunity to control the narrative and opted not to. And therefore, the narrative is controlling Michigan. Now, ultimately, it will not control Michigan. Michigan's just going to be in the news cycle. And for some people, the narrative that they have concocted is truth, right? Like the hashtag cheating is truth for Ohio State and MSU people, right? But this is why I also say, those in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. I was saying this to Michael earlier about how of the 4 schools that really hate each other within the Big Ten, well, they don't all hate each other, because Michigan State loves them some Ohio State for some reason. Michigan State, Ohio State, and Penn State, all 4 have had some pretty massive scandals happen over the last 15 years. So those in glass, that's why I say none of these things should be rivalry fodder, number one. But there are people that are there are Michigan State fans who absolutely think that without Connor Stalions, even though Connor was not at all at the Michigan State game in 2023, that Michigan could not have won that game. There are Ohio State fans that think the same thing for any of the games. Again, Connor absolutely loves how much you all put your faith in him and think that he controlled entire seasons, right? And to be fair to Joel, he was the one who came out and said, the more that you know about football, the less that you think that sign stealing had any real impact on the 1-loss column for Michigan over the course of those years. it was the trenches. There's people that love to sit there and say that Donovan Edwards broke out 2 long runs because of Connor Stalions, even though Connor's signaling being the cat and mouse game had to do with him being on defense and not the other way around, and saying that they think that everyone internalized exactly where every player is on any given play call at any given time, and that every single player on the field knew exactly what that was, and every single coach knew exactly what that was. It's really not that complicated. So there are people, though, that have that belief, and they're going to cling to it to the very bitter end, even if properly educated by anybody. And it's just asinine. I understand that for those of you who are Ohio State fans, more so than anyone else watching or listening to this, that this diatribe of mine is angering you, and you want to call me names and all that stuff. That doesn't change what the actual facts are. That doesn't change that the NCAA has no evidence of the things that it is alleging. That was Michigan's NOA response. You have no evidence. You have a lot of hearsay, and we want to know, and we know who, but we want you to tell the world who the people are who have given you this intel. So that is it's there. There's the truth, and then there's the narrative. And if you're a rival fan and you just want to see Michigan hammered, chances are you wanted that regardless, right? Because you cannot stand Michigan having lost 4 times or having won four games in a row against your Buckeyes. And I don't fault Joel at all for him having this narrative, because again, Michigan could have controlled its narrative better than it did and been just more upfront about, here's why Santa Ono is going to be leaving us. But that wouldn't be fair to Santa Ono, I understand. And then, therefore, you could have been more upfront about, here's why we are suspending Sherrone Moore. Right? They had opportunities to control the narrative and say, here is what we are doing and why we are doing it. And they chose not to. There's no NCAA law, bylaw, what have you, that says Michigan cannot respond or control the narrative or any of those things. And it would have been true. That's the thing. If it was a lie, then obviously I wouldn't be having this conversation. But so I can't blame Joel for coming to these conclusions on his own, because that's what Michigan allowed him to do. But I do think that by the time that Michigan is punished the way it will be, and it's not going to be to the liking. I mean, it's not going to be Michigan fans' liking either. I've been pretty clear about that for probably about a year. You can kind of read the tea leaves. The NCAA wants its pound of flesh, and it's going to get it one way or another. That said, it's not going to be the vacated wins, the postseason bans. And if I'm wrong again, I will give you rivals the biggest mea culpa ever. But you're going to still cling to the idea of this was the biggest cheating scandal ever. And it's nothing's going to change your mind ever. So be it. Anyway, that's going to do it for us today. We will be back theoretically on Tuesday. Anyway, we'll talk to you again soon. Thanks for watching. Thank you for listening. Peace.